And then let me get the Facebook Live ready to go. They said it was going to rain all day today. I'm surprised it's like nice outside.
Yeah, nice. It's a little humid, but it's nice.
Yeah.
Let's see what's going on here. Yeah.
For some reason, the Facebook Live is not responding really well. It's always been kind of a hit or miss with the Facebook Live.
Yeah, I don't think they do too well on the Facebook Live.
Well, the reason why I got the webinar is so that it can go onto Facebook. Let me see. Maybe I can do it on YouTube instead. But I like to have the Facebook going. Let's see who else is in today. Somebody just popped in.
Oh, we got Luis Hacho.
Oh yeah, he's been on these ones. Good to have you in, Luis.
And he's not going to show up on this view. He'll just
No, because you're a panelist.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Yeah, and so you are the only one that really shows up. You and myself, and then the attendees are the ones that are watching. The panelists are the ones that are going back and forth and talking.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, let's see. Let's see if I can do this one more time. I'll give it one more attempt. This is the craziest, wildest thing with this one. Alrighty. All right, let me see if I can do it on the YouTube page, because the Facebook Live, that's so strange that the Facebook Live isn't working. Usually it takes me to the page. Let me see if I can get it one more time. Let's see.
Good job.
What'd you cut, hun? Oh, just pruned it a little bit.
Makes me really scared to turn this lamp. Why? I thought I was killing him. I thought I was hurting him or nothing. Alright, I'm gonna go to town on this. Do it. Maybe I have that.
Well, it is not responding this morning, but that's okay. No worries. Let's see. So yeah, I think something on my side probably glitched a little bit, because there's certain things I can't see. Are we still showing only 3 attendees?
It looks like Javi just came on.
Okay, you see, I can't see the attendees.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I can't see it. So I think mine had a hiccup in it or something. Let me see.
Oh, it doesn't have the little bars on top, because when I hit participants, it has bar on top that says panelists and then attendees.
Yeah, and when I click on attendees, I can't see it, but when I click on panelists, I can see it. So it's a weird little thing going on. But let's see. I mean, there's nothing we can really do about it. If I leave the meeting and come back in, it's not going to really do very much anyway. All right, so I guess you keep track of who comes in since I can't see them. And let's just start going since we're already here at time. Welcome in, everybody. And we're going to be talking today with Studio Martial Arts' very own Mr. Waylon, who also is a very good leader in his own right. Not only that, but he is a big movement advocate. And so we thought that practice would be a very good way to start this one. So let's see, I've got Mr. Waylon frozen really quick. Let me see if he comes back in and then we can get started. All right, Waylon, I got you back. Yeah, it looks like I lost you for a split second.
That's okay.
But anyway, Waylon, we wanted to talk about leadership and practice and what that means. Why don't you talk to us a little bit about the leadership itself and what that has to do with practice and just honing your skills, because I know you're pretty proficient with this one. So why don't you just start with that and what that means to you?
Of course. So I think a big thing that leadership takes on is I think I am a firm believer in kind of walking the walk, in that embodiment can generally speak volumes, because as most people can tell, whether if they have siblings or if they have someone that they care about, or any scenario that they've found themselves in, sometimes the hands-on approach is almost too hands-on, trying to correct things and trying to lead with kind of a more of a aggressive style, even if it's not necessarily aggressive in terms of it being angry or bad, but trying to mold people oftentimes has a negative effect. You know, when we tell kids not to do something, they're more inclined to do the thing we tell them not to. It's like, don't touch that. What do they want to do more? They want to touch that. So things like that. I think leadership comes a lot, like I said, from that embodiment, from just walking the walk and then being a product of that. Seeing this is where you can be if you follow these steps that I have walked now, and now the path is paved. So a big part of paving that path, I think, is walking it. So I think the kind of the key tenet of leadership is definitely the embodiment aspect, the practice of practicing what you preach, of course. So in the practice of practice is kind of where I think leadership really, really boils down to. And then whenever you have a method, when you have something that people can walk those steps and see the same progress you saw, and they can see different pieces, that's a beautiful part of leadership as well, is that the students underneath somebody who becomes that leader gets to see other ways to get, because maybe they see something about that leader that maybe they're guided towards or that they want to see for themselves. And the route in which they get there may not be the same route that you took, but they'll teach you something even in their process, because you walked this path, they might find a different obstacle and take it a different way. So seeing that individual path kind of take on its form, I think that's kind of the epitome of leadership, is like I said, that embodiment, but then allowing people to express their own paths in that way. So I think that's a very powerful part of leadership for sure.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing a lot of is you're talking about not only having a role model, but you yourself being that model as well. Not just seeing it, but also you touched on that you see it and then you know it, and then you bring that onto yourself. You bring that responsibility to have these things, not just to look at it, not just to this and oh look at this guy, he's doing really good, I can, that's something that I can do, but you actually are like, no, I'm going to put in the work to be able to do those things. I'm gonna, and that's something that I've seen you really embody yourself, because you're very strict on yourself with diet, you're very strict on yourself with the training that you do for your movement and for your physique and your body. And how does that all fit in? Like, what is it that motivates you to do everything? Because it is a lot of discipline.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's an awesome question. Motivation. I think a lot of people are looking for that. They're looking for motivation. And I think motivation is almost the antithesis to discipline, in my opinion. Motivation is very fleeting. It comes and goes. We wake up, we feel a certain way. It's like the fire's not there today. And so I think when people look to solely motivation, sometimes that's, I think, where they falter, especially external motivation. We look for trainers and life coaches and all these things, which are beautiful things, which are incredible things to have. However, it's important to know their place as additives, as something that's incredibly beneficial or a supplement to your discipline or your drive. But without that discipline, I think that motivation won't always be there, because your teachers and your coaches and your instructors, they don't follow you home. They don't follow you everywhere you go. They don't, that's not their job. And so I think having that discipline that you brought up is a key tenet, is to wake up and be like, maybe I don't feel like it, but maybe I'll start with something small. And don't beat yourself up. Don't beat yourself into submitting to discipline, but start slow. Do what you can right now and build that momentum with those little successes. You know, we talk a lot about things like making your bed, making a simple breakfast in the morning, like making sure you drink water as soon as you get up. You've just gone 8 to 10 hours, hopefully, without water. You should start up with some water, some things to just kind of kickstart. And that's more of the dietary approach, but even mental approach. Take 5 minutes to think about what you're going to do today, to kind of hype yourself up and be an encouragement to yourself. Those are things that get the gears turning. That's what we want. It's not about having that waking up in the days of success. Nobody wakes up with the day being a success. It's the active decisions they make to get to that place where they can be now fueled to go and do the things they want. And for myself, I think the motivation, the big factor that I'm interested in terms of like a practice or a movement practice, and it kind of, martial arts is definitely obviously my expertise. That's what I, done for 10 years. But it branched me into other modalities of movement. And for that reason, the reason behind that is honestly just a lot of curiosity, is that there's a lot of things to unpack. There's a lot of things to learn. There's frustrations you have to get through learning, something simple, like say a handstand. Very simple, like it's simple to look at, not so simple maybe to learn. Because if you look at the amount of people in the world who probably want to learn that skill or think they want to learn that skill, that's a high number. But the amount of people who can successfully perform that feat, much, much smaller number than the amount of people who think they want it. And I think the difference there that becomes from wanting to do it and being able to do it is that's the gap in discipline. That's the gap in work. That's the gap in seeing that, oh man, that looks really cool in front of me. But do I want to fail for 10,000 hours? Do I want to fail 10,000 times? Do I want to sit there and put in the grinding work to accomplish that feat? And I think that's something that's very important, especially if you're in a martial arts practice. There's going to be obstacles. There's going to be so many things in your way. There's oftentimes an opponent, another physical being in your way. And to conquer that is something that's, I think, not only for self-esteem, confidence building, just that energy that you need to go throughout your life, and that feeling of capacity. No one likes to feel incapable. Incapacity breeds that hopelessness. And so for someone to feel capable and to feel sturdy and to feel not only physically capable, but mentally sharp as well. Those things go hand in hand, to be able to go in. So many people go their entire lives and never agree to shake hands and hug somebody that they were just in physical combat with. Like that is a profound, that's integrated into our DNA, combat, things like that. It's a very, very primal thing. And yes, if we've honed it, sharpened it, cleaned it up throughout thousands of years of practice. But like I said, going through that is something that's so potently powerful, because it's just you and that person, and it's just you and your practice and what's done. And there was some quote that brought up what's done in the morning hours, the dark morning hours, will be brought to light in the ring. That's one of those things. It really shows your work. That is you showing your work. That's putting what you've done to the test. What tools have I used? Whose instruction did I take? Those things, those choices you've made, those daily decisions. Because if someone you're sparring against trained the extra hour a day, you're going to have a much difficult time. So again, I think that those things are just very tangible. They speak true to the work that you've put in. And I think that's a very, very powerful, tangible, beautiful part of a martial arts practice, or any general movement practice, where you're constantly, you're doing the 10,000 jabs or the 10,000 kick-ups or the 10,000 backflips for the gymnast or something like that. Something difficult that you just have to buckle down and get involved in your work. And it's not always entertaining, and it's not always going to be like, it's not always going to be fun, but it's the end goal that we're after. It's the discovery, the curiosity, the triumph. Those things are what we're searching for, I think. And I think that once you taste it even slightly, that becomes its own permanent motivation. And then you found that inside, that does go home with you. That is in the car with you on the way to work, is that which you found. It sounds kind of woo-woo, but that which you found within yourself is something nobody can take from you. That which you found through practice is something nobody can take from you. And I think that is maybe an underrated factor in quality of life that I encourage people to take on and be hungry for, is that sense of triumph that you've developed for yourself through craftsmanship and practice. So I think that's a very powerful thing for sure in terms of motivation and sustainability in the discipline. Absolutely.
Yeah, and it sounds like from what you're saying that motivation itself requires discipline. That
Absolutely.
every day you need to have that mindset and that focus. Like you said, you need to bring it out from within you. You need to know what is really the most true of what you want. And then you talked about how, yeah, it's the people that can do it and then the people that want to do it. And I think the main separating factor, as you said, with discipline is these people actually knew that they really wanted to do it. These people actually thought that they wanted to do it.
Yes.
And the training reveals that in itself.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something that I've seen with you over the years is you're a big fan of, like you said, repping. You say the 10,000 times. You will put yourself in one spot and you will do it over and over. I've seen you for hours before. You go at it like just, okay.
A little obsessive.
But that's the big quality of leadership that you show is you're willing to stop what you're doing. You want to see something work. You sit down or you get in one spot and you practice and you rep it. And that's why you can bring it out so quickly. You know, it's been something. And I think that really does, like you say, go hand in hand. And, you know, with the motivation, do you have any particular thing that motivates you particularly? What are some of the things that motivate you? What are your goals?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a pretty classic feat. Thinking of conquering yourself yesterday. I think competing with yourself, I think is a very powerful thing, is showing up for yourself, making time. I set appointments in my calendar for time to be like, okay, you need to sit, collect yourself, remember why you're doing any of this, and then proceed with that fire. You need to rekindle that because sometimes it goes out. You give a little bit of a way here and there and you burn it out. The fuel gets used up. So dedicating time to sit still and re-find it, because if you find it once, you officially know it's there. If you've ever in your life felt that drive just kick in because you're sitting down and you see something motivational and it's like that didn't inherently motivate you. Nothing inherently motivates you because you could be watching and listening to the same thing, but if you don't understand the language they're saying it in, nothing inherent to it motivated you. How you perceived it did. And so you can safely say that that came from you. So finding ways to recreate that sensation of, you know what, I've got a task to do. I've got a purpose, you know, I've got something to achieve. I've got something to discover. You have so much at our disposal when it comes to things like, you know, we talk about the books and the things you can get done that breed those small successes, the practice and training, because, you know, we have the blessing of being a school, and that when you learn something, you take it home forever. You learn a jab, you learn a cross, and you take that piece that your instructors gave you, and you can take it and work it forever and get sharper and sharper and be a better person for it through going through those trials, frustration, those 10,000 reps. That is a huge gift. And that is an asset in a world that is hungry for immediate gratification, in a world where we're more and more 15-second videos, small little clips, something to make me laugh and then something to make me cry and then something to, you know, it's all over the place. But to sit down, hunker down and take something that someone who cared for you taught you and to practice that and to commit to that is something that it's very cyclical, in that when you start performing the task, you become more and more motivated by the task itself. You become what, you know, the Zen Buddhists or anything would call mindful. You start to tap into the small sensations, the small motions. You start to loosen up, tighten up when you need. All these little pieces that can bring you more here in a world that's very just here. We're living from the neck up, as they say. It's very like a cerebral, you know, existence, in that how many people are guilty of overthinking. How often do you hear someone that's like, oh, I just overthought it. I'm just overthinking. That's a plague. That's a very detrimental thing. And I think practice, especially, you know, martial arts is a very age-old practice that has been known for this in itself. But many practices offer this. And it's that it brings you to awareness. It's that you have to be, say you're in a sparring match and you have somebody, you can't doze off and think about like, oh, how many likes did that post get on Facebook? Or, oh man, my aunt said that thing at the dinner. I didn't really like that. You can't do that. You have to be here now or risk getting hit in the face. That's a powerful, potent tool for that curiosity and for that discovery, to just be able to dive in and be all in. Like a child who plays, that childlike playfulness. When they playing on a task, they're all in. And that's something that I think even as adults we can benefit greatly from, is finding.
Lost you a bit. Let's see. He'll be back.
You're doing everything poorly if you're trying to do everything well. And so to find one thing like a practice,
Let's see, Waylon. We're
more
coming
people are
back.
definitely doing that, and we're even
We lost you for a bit. Sorry, you froze up for a little bit.
yeah.
You were at practice to find that.
Oh
that.
yes. Like there's no substitute for that, for the present moment that brings you to. There's no supplement that's going to bring you that much awareness. That's going to bring you that. We tried time and time again. There's nothing. There's no quick fix. And so that dedication to practice and that commitment to goal is paramount and can bring so.
Oh, we got some lag. Let's see.
There are a lot of things that were taken off of a lot of people's plate. And now we're having to contend with the fact that maybe it wasn't the time we were lacking to get the things done that we wanted. It was the discipline. And so we're seeing again that there might be some error there, and that we thought, oh, I don't have the time to do that. I don't have the time to practice. I don't have the time to be mindful. I don't have the time to meditate or take care of myself or those things. Now we have to contend with, now I have all the time or plenty more time. Am I still not making time for that? Because making time for that is discipline. Having time for that is that external locus of control, but making time for it is that internal. So I think that's very important too, is to understand you have control over the amount of discipline you want to apply to your life, and it can offer you great freedoms in the process.
And I think you're hitting on a couple of things. The first thing that I really noticed in terms of your leadership style, you've really embraced the journey, because you're talking about things that are difficult and things that are naturally not what people like to do or love to do. But you're talking about, no, it's going, it's the journey, it's the time, it's the everything. That's enjoyable. That's what you want to try to latch onto. And that's a lot of difficult thing, because like you said, we live in a world of instant gratification, instant this, instant that. And it's a really important thing that the students understand, or anybody who's watching this understands, that enjoying that journey is what's going to get you there, not so much the destination. And that sounds like you've really hit that. And you've also put into yourself the fact that you can do that. It can be done, that enjoyability and that motivation. And that's something that's really important. I think that people really need to hear about that. Oh, it looks like we lost you again. Let's see. Coming back in. Okay, so can you hear me?
There we go. We're back.
Yeah,
Okay. It's not that enjoyability.
Yes, the enjoyability of the journey. And it sounds like you've not only put that into your leadership style, but you do that as you go. It's very important. And then you're also saying that right now is a time to make sure that you can put in those reps, because you still do have control of your time at this point. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's a really good message to give out, I think. And what kind of things have you been up to during the lockdown? Because I know you've been talking about, I've been spending time reading, I've been spending time practicing. Every day I wake up, I do more because I've got the time now. Talk a little bit about what you're doing during this time.
Yeah, my training has been phenomenal. I've been able to just kind of dedicate, like once every couple days, I'll do like a classic like strength session. I'll put up the gymnastics rings or find something. You can go out and you can do so much. But generally my morning looks like a cold shower. I'm a firm advocate for that. There's a thing called sleep inertia that can dictate the first 4 hours of your morning. If there's not something to kind of shock the system awake, that grogginess that kind of comes from waking up, you're still in a state of sleep. And that's actually, it's considered a state of mind where you're actually not safe to be operating things like heavy machinery. Hopefully a lot of people aren't driving in the morning right now anyways.
Right.
But so it's a very powerful thing to just wake up and commit to that discomfort immediately. To find yourself adaptable is something that is so overlooked. We think it's that, again, that immediate gratification. The cold shower in the morning sounds like suffering. It's like, why would you put yourself through that pain and discomfort? But it's like, wait till you get to the other side of that cold shower. The feeling, not only that you did it, it's like this, like almost like this warrior mentality. It's like, I did it. I went in and I took the breaths I needed, and I conquered that task that seemed horrible, that you can safely say 99% of people will not take a cold shower in the morning, but you're that 1%. All it took was a cold shower, and you're the 1%. That's an amazing thing at your fingertips, is just flip the dial on your shower, and that can change a lot of things. It shocks you awake. You come out and there's no cup of coffee with enough caffeine in it to have that invigorated feeling. And you can have your cup of coffee on top of it, but it is an amazing thing to wake up like that. So like I said, the morning starts with a cold shower. As of recently, I started, and it was more reading. My first week here, I think I read 5 books the first week that we were in quarantine, because I was just dropping like 250, 300 pages a day at least, like just these big books. I read a textbook front to back. And that's not always where people start. Start with 10 pages a day. Commit to 10 pages a day, and you will be so ahead of the game. It's unfathomable, because a lot of people are just binging Netflix right now, which is, that's a choice of time, and maybe that's nice for them, but maybe the byproduct won't be so nice. Maybe it's nice right now. It feels good. What's the byproduct of that? We know we have the kind of the epidemic beyond the pandemic we're experiencing, but the Western epidemic of like the obesity and cardiovascular disease and painful lower backs and all those things. It's like, it's those daily decisions. So waking up, like I said, the cold shower. This morning I did 30 minutes stillness practice. So I just set a stopwatch. I don't set a timer for the fact that I think meditation is something you should do until you come to some realization, or you come to something different. When you've altered your state of consciousness, you're ready to come back up. And so I usually set a timer, and I've found that the timer usually goes to about 30 to 35 minutes before I feel like I can go about the rest of my day and think before I speak, and come into every room with, kindness in mind, and come in, very constructively, to be mindful of every sensation and every touch and everything you eat. And when you're in a state of mindfulness, I think it takes me about 30 minutes. But doing, 10 minutes a day here and there, that's a brilliant practice as well. Committing to the reading. I read usually I'll read a section of a book a day. And sometimes that looks like 25 pages. Sometimes that looks like 175 pages. It just depends. I commit to a section of a book. Some books are broken up in like part 1, 2, or 3. If it has 20 chapters, I'll consider a section like 5 chapters. I kind of section it like that. I'm like, that's my day. Spend 10 pages here, go and do something in the garden or something like that, and then come in, commit to another 5, 6 pages, make some food, being aware of those things. Also being aware that you have the time to do things that maybe you didn't. Maybe before, eating was something you did to get your belly full, to go to work and get your things done. But have you ever sat with a bowl of food and taken 30 minutes to eat every bite and feel the sensation of it, like of everything in your mouth, and then taking it very slow, chewing more helps with digestion, vitamin and mineral absorption. So you get those byproducts, but it's also just in a state of mindfulness. How much can we get from just paying attention to how it feels when we open a door, or how it feels to do different things, how it feels as the temperature of the shower goes down, all of those things that you can tap into.
Well, so, I will add this, that a cold shower feels better when you go in quickly. It doesn't feel, it doesn't feel very good when we go from hot to cold right away.
Yeah, that's a tricky one. It depends. After, like, if I do like an intense workout, I'll go straight into the cold, because they're just trying to cool down the body. Right. But in the morning, actually, I'll do hot shower first, like a warm shower, and then I'll turn it all the way to cold, and I'll stand outside of the shower stream, and I'll do a hand and an arm, and then a hand and an arm, and then I'll dip a leg in, and then I'll dip another, and I just take it super slow. And it's just the breath.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I remember I did the cold showers for like 6 months, and we talked about it, but I don't know how you could rev it up to heat and then slowly walk back into cold, man. That's too much for me. I'm sorry. Because the first week you do the cold showers, you feel it. Yeah, like after the first week, you're fine. But the first week, like, you're pushing. So it sounds like you really commit your days to really doing disciplined activity, whatever it is it may be, from the shower to the books, because that's what you're talking about is, let me crank up the discipline level a little bit more. Let me see how one step at a time. And that's an important thing, daily ritualistic practice of discipline. That's what's going to seep into everything else that you do. And it sounds like you're going down, because I paraphrase this quote. Show me your rituals, and I'll show you your success rate. And that sounds like
Yeah.
kind of how you live
Absolutely.
every day.
Yeah.
You
Committing to living it.
that
Yeah.
success.
Absolutely. And I also think there's sometimes some warping that goes on with discipline, because discipline, oftentimes we use discipline as, oh, we need to discipline the children and we need to discipline, these things. And it kind of has almost this negative connotation in our point and click, quick fix kind of culture. And I think that that's incredibly erroneous. There's a lot of cultures that pride themselves in the enjoyment of discipline. Not only, we've listened to like Jocko Willink and the discipline equals freedom, but even in a present moment, doing those things like the breaths that you take. For instance, we keep bringing up the cold shower because that is an act of discipline that most people will never take up. They'll even know.
Oh, I lost him. Let's see if he comes back. Let's see. Okay, there you go. Okay, so
I stopped when I froze. Yeah. So they'll look at all the different things and they'll know the value that it will bring them of craftsmanship, of any of those things, of the, like I said, the benefits of the cold shower, all those little things of meditation, but then they still won't do it because it's such a feat. And I was even talking today with some of my roommates. I was asking them, I was like, so why do you think it is, like, when it comes to meditation, even somebody who's not necessarily well versed in meditation, there's a sort of authority that comes with that. When you see somebody in the corner like meditating, and they're in that classic like they're sitting crisscross and they have their hands on their knees and their eyes closed, somebody's meditating, and people want to be like quiet. And even if they're not really into it, they want to kind of respect that. People see that, and there's this kind of unspoken authority that comes with the discipline. But what are you producing? We live in a time period where we're very obsessed. We're very type A culture, very get it done. Let's get some stuff done. Let's go. Let's go. Let's drink our Dunkin' Donuts and go. Like American runs on, we just go and go and go. But somehow there's still an authority to the Zen art of doing nothing. Because meditating is, you're thinking about things and you maybe have a mantra and you have a goal and you have stillness in mind, but you're not producing anything. You don't open your eyes and you made a product. You don't open your eyes and you've officially served the world. It's a purely, mindful act. It's just yourself, but there's still an authority to it. Almost even kids, I've seen 4 and 5-year-old children see somebody meditating and go, okay, shh, quiet. It's like, there's a respect that's there because we know that there's trial that comes with just sitting still and sitting with yourself. There's like an unspoken, it's a very, very like integrated part where we see that and we're like, that person is working on themselves. That person is displaying that discipline. That's a leader in some way. That person is a teacher right now. They're teaching me that people I respect meditate. People I respect have habits like that and exercise discipline. And then there's no better teacher than that, and then embodiment, than somebody seeing the results of that, and then wanting that for themselves. That's a permanent motivator right there, in my opinion. You see what you want, you see the steps it took, and then you're just on the journey. But you have to decide you really want it. Earlier, we talked about the handstand, just a prime example of how many people want it versus how many people really wanted it. I often say that some people want it, but most people just want to want it. Those that want it go after the work and they're doing it. But the people who are like, I wish I was good at drawing. It's like, maybe you just wish it was easy. Because if you wish you were good at drawing, you'd be taking more classes and you'd be going on YouTube and doing the thousands of free resources at your fingertips and books and everything to learn how to draw. But you see something beautiful and you want to create that, but you maybe don't want to put in all the work that it took to create something like that, to get to that skill level and that aptitude. So like I said, that discipline is something that's so powerful to display, especially for the youth, but also in people in a culture where we're just kind of, I think, backswinging from that go, go, go culture. Again, with the quarantine, this is also making people contend with what were your real priorities? How much go, 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 go were you doing that maybe was unnecessary? And not all of it, a lot of it, I'm super excited for us to go back to normalcy. Do not get me wrong. But maybe now we can start to think, I've been here with my family and I've been here with my loved ones. And you are reminded that, this is difficult. This is difficult. I haven't spent this much time with my loved ones in a long time. And that's sad. Not sad in like something that's terribly wrong, but it's something to reflect. Like, this is what's important to me and it's still here. And maybe you have a different reflection on what to cherish in those times. So I think this is a big, almost like global timeout you know? And like I was talking about earlier, is that it has a negative connotation, this discipline thing, because when we discipline children, sometimes, in my opinion, of course, and everybody has their philosophy on parenting and those kinds of things. However, but when you tell a child, go sit in timeout and think about what you've done, and you say it in the aggressive tone and they treat it like punishment, you're classically conditioning that individual to dislike stillness, to dislike meditating and reflecting on their actions. They now have a punishment relationship with that. Just like, oh, you know, you can't eat the ice cream until you eat your veggies. You're creating this like, oh, well, I really want the ice cream, but the veggies are like the trial I have to get through to get to my ice cream. And so it's the framing error, or I've heard of parents who make their kids study and read books whenever they get in trouble. And it's like, they're going to treat that like punishment for the rest of their life. And so it's you have to be kind of careful, because it's a delicate relationship with discipline that we're fostering as leaders. They have to make sure it's something that you do this and you enjoy it. It's your life. It's something you eat, breathe, and sleep. It's not something that I'm doing because I'm reprimanding myself or punishing myself. I'm doing it because it brings me great fulfillment, and it brings me something that these immediate gratifications just pale in comparison to. So I think that's very important, is your relationship with discipline shouldn't be like, oh, I'm disciplining myself. It's not punishment. It's a lifestyle, and it's a lifestyle choice that brings you many fruit. It's the gardening. It's that's the discipline is growing a fruit tree. It's like, you're not going to see the fruit for 10 years, but it's going to be sweet when you do, because you played every part in that role, in that process. So I think that's an important thing, is we need to alter discipline from being something we discipline ourselves, we discipline things, to we live and act in discipline, in accordance with our discipline and our maxims for life, you know?
Yeah, it sounds like what you're hitting on is the slow way is the fast way. The slow way, making
absolutely.
it slowly, you know, because a lot of people want the end right away, and they don't want to. They want to suffer enough only to get the means, but at the same time, I mean, people have a very different view, like what you were saying with the parent example, how discipline, right? You know, go sit in the corner, that's your discipline. And I believe everything has a place, but I believe you need to explain that, and you need to harbor the want, right? You need to be able to harbor the want for these things. And that's difficult. That's very, very difficult. For example, when I say that everything has a place, there's a reason why we send them into timeout, but the kid doesn't know that reason, and the kid's going to think of it as the punishment. He's not going to think of it as a lesson or anything. And that's something that happens, and it's a way of framing that doesn't quite fit. And I think what you're hitting is, you've got to be able to frame it in the way that it's going to be best for you to keep on doing what you're doing. Is that a fair way to say it?
Yeah, absolutely. Reminding the subject, oftentimes the child, reminding them that I care about you deeply, and I don't want to see this make you suffer. I don't want to see you hurt from this, and this could hurt you or others, and I don't want to see that. And so therefore we have to put in place this right now so that we can correct this for the future. Kids don't see that immediately when you're like, go to the corner, or go to your room, you're grounded. Like they don't see that from those words. It's a very, I mean, that's not intuitive to assume that the pointing and the tone and things like that is like, oh, this is a lesson I'm supposed to learn here. It's just like, oh, I got to go through this punishment. I got to go through this thing. And so I think it's a powerful thing to reframe that. And then I also think that it makes leaders feel much better, or instructors or parents. I think I've seen it make them feel a lot better as well, in terms of like, you know, I can safely say that my goal here is to help my child and to love them and care for them in this way, and to see them grow and to see them prosper. And that's my intention here. And to be reminded of that intention is such a powerful thing, because as we know, intention guides, it dictates almost everything you're going to do in your life. Is what is the end goal? What was that? There was, it was like beliefs. Yeah. There's like a whole like line of things where it starts with just beliefs, how your beliefs create your entire life. It's like beliefs become your thoughts become your words become your actions become your habits, and your habits dictate your value. And so all the way back there, your belief, just your belief in your thoughts, so your intention will dictate the entire way you're going to value your life, through a sequence of processes, through a sequence of how you go about your life. People will see those habits, and they will also be able to kind of see, what does this person value? Because someone's like, I value discipline. Two people say I value discipline, and that person sees one, like I said, binging on Netflix, and one practicing a craft, practicing something that's difficult and going through those trials. what are they going to really dictate are the values of those people? The values are officially not the same anymore. That's not how you're going to be perceived and taken on, even if you say it, because your thoughts were, oh, I'm going to, or your belief was maybe I believe in discipline, but your thoughts were, oh, this Netflix series seems really interesting. I'm just going to, well, we got all this free time. Okay. And so that becomes, again, your words, your actions. I'm now binging on Netflix. So it trickles down. And so like we were even talking about with the discipline is that your intention will set the end goal. Your intention behind an act will set the outcome of that act from what I've seen, of course.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And the intent is a very important part of everything. And it's different whenever you see the different types of people and the different types of upbringings. But you and I have seen people from very different upbringings, and
Absolutely.
a lot of people, there's something inside of them that leads them to the same kind of discipline. Either they come from a very wealthy household, or they come from a more poor household, and then they still have that discipline somewhere along the way. So we've seen all sorts of people be able to achieve these feats. It's not limited to where you came from. I think your brother said your past, or what your brother said something different, but basically what I'm trying to say is past doesn't equal the future.
Yeah.
Basically, being
Absolutely.
able to bring that out, everybody can do it.
Yeah, we've all heard those success stories of people who come from, and I always think this is a powerful thing. And it's never to. I want to preframe this by saying I would never hope that anybody feels invalidated or anything like that about where they come from. However, it is safe to say that there is always somebody out there who comes from less than you, but is striving for maybe more than you, or has come to where you want to be. There is somebody who has come from a more disadvantageous position than you did and has achieved what you're going for, has achieved exactly what you're going for. And they did it in spite of all of those odds. You can safely say someone on this planet has done it. And so that's a very empowering, that can be a very like, if you take it personally, it's very like, oh man, that means that my problems aren't that bad and this and that. But your problems are unique to you, and that becomes something that you want to address, of course. That's important. Everybody's individually very important, and their problems are also individually very important. But that should not hold you back from some potential. The moment your problems and issues become something that you think is actually holding you back, those have become self-limiting beliefs. We see a lot of those in almost all of the self-help books and all the success books and all those things touch on that, on self-limiting beliefs. And if you don't believe in yourself and what you can achieve and what you're capable of, how are you going to expect anybody else to see your vision, to see what you want for yourself and see what you want for the world around you? So it starts with you, waking up. And like I said, I make those appointments with myself to remind myself, and it can be almost like self-flattery, but you have to do it. You have to go in and, we talk a lot about the self-talk and how you talk to yourself. So reminding yourself that you are doing this, you're doing the best you absolutely can, that you are a unique inspiration to the world around you, that you are capable and that you are developing day in and day out. Reminding yourself of the work that you're putting in it gives you that immediate gratification that you've been looking for on the 15-second videos and Netflix. It gives you that immediate gratification because you're like, wow, I'm invigorated, I'm alive, and I'm grateful to be here. But then it also fuels you to do more things for you in the future. So then it becomes more and more potent. It's like an avalanche of this, almost like, I can only describe it as like living, this avalanche of living, where you feel more invigorated and more in tune with life, and you have more enriching experiences and more lessons coming your way all the time, because it's like, wow, it's like that success breeds success is that kind of saying. And you just keep going. It's immediate and it's delayed at that point. But for a while, you have to just put in that work, that daily work, to be like, maybe I don't feel too good, but I'm still going to look in the mirror and I'm going to talk to myself like I'm a champion. Like I'm the coach who's going to get me to be the playmaker. Like I'm that coach for me right now. And to tune in and to do that is an incredibly, incredibly potent things. And, as instructors, as leaders, we do the best we can to do that, especially for the youth who still need to learn that. But adults especially need this skill as well, to be able to talk to themselves and to respect where they're at and then be hungry for more. Not get complacent, but be content. Be content and then keep going, and then keep going for it. That's a very powerful thing. So showing up for yourself is kind of the message there. Showing up, making time to make sure that you can keep going, because burnout is a catastrophe. Nobody deserves to feel that way. When you see somebody burnt out, especially somebody you care about, or when you feel it, you don't wish that upon anybody. We've all felt that before, where burnout just can eat you alive. And so to keep that sustainability and keep kindling that flame, I think there's almost nothing more valuable than that.
Yeah, so I think the overarching thing that you've been saying and we've been talking about has been primarily you've got to work on discipline every day. You don't just work on the acts themselves, but you work on leveling and making sure that you have that ability every single day. But Mr. Whalen, I mean, that's really important. I like it that we've talked about deliberate practice, or we didn't even get to deliberate practice, but we've talked a lot about making sure that you have that discipline to practice and that framing and that level for yourself. And I think that that's very important for the students to hear.
Yeah.
And guys, I'm going to open it up. It looks like some people are already ready to ask some questions. So I'm going to open it up to some Q&A. And remember, whoever asks the best question gets some 5 extra stripes on their belt. But we've got the first one here. I think you've already seen it, but let me just read it out loud. One of the main goals of a parent is to lead and teach a child values and morals. They need a strong base first, even in discipline. Do you think values are less taught today?
Do I think values are less taught today? I think that values can be something that is almost generational as well. Do I think they're taught less? I'm not sure. I think there's a lot of different values. I think there's so many more schools of thought nowadays that it makes it really tricky to buckle down and to remember what has worked. Things like discipline, things like respect for humanity, respect for another person because they're another person. Two big things. I think those are two big things: is respect for humanity and discipline. Those are pretty tried and true, age-old, moral values that I think have stood the test of time and have worked for the greatest minds that we've ever seen. Things like curiosity, adventure, those kind of more whimsical terms, curiosity and adventure. However, think of, your most brilliant minds. You got like Nelson Mandela, Albert Einstein. They were big on talking about creativity and those kinds of things, that curiosity, and being like, oh, what's next? Let's tinker with this and play with this and kind of have that approach. So I don't know if they're taught less. I think they're more scattered. I think that maybe some morals are diluted, and there's so many schools of thoughts now that sometimes it's hard to kind of get a rein in on what we're trying to teach at all, on what like morals and values we should pick up and how deep we should go into them. Unfortunately, I think a lot of values are twisted into narratives, which is unfortunate. Things like compassion, things like individuality, sometimes those can be twisted to fit certain narratives in a lot of different, cultures, political ideologies, all those different things, which of course we won't have to touch on. But like I said, I don't think they're taught less. I think sometimes there's, like I said, too many schools of thought that people don't commit to one. And that doesn't mean to be narrow-minded, but at least to walk that path before you determine where that path leads you. Walk a path because you have time to walk more paths, but commit to one first. Commit, that's the act of discipline, is to commit to something with consistency, commit to those years to earn that black belt, all those things. Commit to that, and then determine, and then make that judgment call. Be like, oh, that was a beautiful path. I wouldn't trade that for the world, which, wink, wink, nobody trades that for the world. And this is a more tangible example, but earning your black belt, even for me, I at the school all the time with you guys, it moved me to tears. It's a beautiful experience that it's something that you don't question every step you took. The moment you get it, it's all worth it. Every hour of your test, every hour of training, every punch, every kick, it's worth it. It's something that's so valuable, but you commit to that one path. And some would say, oh, it might be perceived as some sort of closed-minded. I committed to this training protocol and this methodology for this long. But you won't know any methodologies if you don't commit to them. And so it's important to be aware of other ones and listen to them and hear them, but also know your path and know your values. So learning that, making it concrete, committing to it, and seeing if it works, using your eyes at the end of the day, be like, did this work? Did this achieve what I was going for? And if it did, you've got your school of thought. You've got your value. It brought you what you want. And if your relationships and your life and your practice and your lifestyle is flourishing, you've got a winning formula. Don't fix what's not broken. So I think that's a very important thing to take, is use your eyes. Is what you're using not working? Then that's time for tinkering, which is another beautiful thing, to tinker and to experiment and to kind of move things around, be like, oh, this didn't quite work. I was too harsh. I was too abrasive, or, oh, I was too soft, and maybe I should have been a little more stern. said no. You will learn these things along the way, but practice, again, that's practice in life, practice in philosophy. Practice the philosophy before you make kind of that overarching judgment of where that will bring you. Let it lead you somewhere first. So I think that's important, is to commit to a school of thought. But all in all, I don't think they're taught less. I think they're taught kind of watered down a little bit. There's so many to choose from. I think that's the big thing.
I think you got a good point there. I agree to that, watered down. I think that's a good way to put it. But I think they are taught, and I think the hardest thing is that nowadays we have it so well. Sometimes we don't see the fruits of those labors. You have to be very patient
Yes.
to really see the fruits of labors with values. And we live in such a society where expediency is what everybody's looking for. Get it done now, do it now, or I want to feel good now, or I want this. And I think that's kind of overshadowed it, but I think the values are still very much alive today. And we see that a lot with how people are really coming together at this time for their neighborhoods and their neighbors and their families. That's just a sight to behold. Every time I turn on the television and I see, neighborhoods are coming together to do this and support the restaurants and to do all these things. I think that just says a lot about our values.
Man, yeah. And it's
So,
crazy. Yeah, you see all over the place. You see all over the place, in our normal times, you see a lot of vision if you look at anything. And I have no affiliation with anything, but if you look at any news broadcast or any social media huge thing, you see this division. You see this oh, it's us against them. It's bad against good. It's this and that. And there's all these kind of polarizing viewpoints on things. But then we have something like this happen, and you see that at our core, people are humane. People don't want to suffer along their fellow man. People do not want that. That's not an integral part of being a social being. Our ascent to the top of the food chain, or to a pretty solid place in the food chain, our ascent to where we are as humankind today came from community, our ability to learn from each other and teach and adapt and to work in groups and to cooperate. It's an integral part of who we are. And so I don't think at people's core, and you have outliers, yes, but for the vast majority, no one wants to watch other people suffer. That brings so few people in this world joy. But if you take in enough media, take in enough misinformation, you might see that it's oh my gosh, there's all this evil going on. There's all this bad things happening. It's this and them. And it's go out and be a practitioner of life. So we were talking about practice earlier. Be a practitioner of life. Don't just theorize based on what you see on some screens, on some media, on some articles. Go out and practice life. And you'll see that it's people want to help other people. People still hold the door open for people. Maybe not as much as you'd like or see, but people still care. You see businesses, small businesses that might be struggling. People are coming together and figuring out to make sure that there's still value in the marketplace and that small businesses are still thriving, that Main Street can stay up and running. People are still doing that. And I think that's so incredibly compassionate, and that should speak volumes. On your community level, from what I'm just seeing in San Antonio, in the communities all over the country, there's beautiful news out there if you look for it and then you go out and see it. Very few times will you go out and see wars going on in front of you, or people just bickering and fighting in public. No, people are very amicable if you go out and, like I said, be a practitioner of life. So when you see that, it's pretty hard to go the other route and hear all this negativity and buy into that and then live your life based on that negativity. Optimism is not the dismissal of the bad things that go on. It's not the ostrich approach where you dig your head in the sand. That's not what optimism is. It's having hope in spite of those negative things. It's having hope and seeing the beauty in life in spite of those things. It's not denying their existence. It's being some sort of leader. Leader is it's like a torch of light. That's the goal, is to be, it's kind of a woo-woo-y phrase, but you have a candle in a dark room and it illuminates parts of the entire room. All it takes is one small candle in an entire room of darkness. So it's a powerful thing to walk that walk and to just be that. And you'll see that a lot of other people are just trying to be that as well. I think the good far triumphs over the bad. And that's I think what we're seeing a lot with this, for sure.
Yeah, the values coming out in the actions today, and I think that's wonderful. And let's see, does anybody else have any good questions for Mr. Waylon right here? We've got two of them. Let's see if we can ask him some more stuff. Let's see.
It looks like, what's this question? It says, what do you think is the best way to recharge yourself when you do burn out as a leader?
Very nice. Oh, Mr. Whalen, also, just so you know, on my side, I can't see the questions. I think my controls are somewhat muted. So why don't you take
Okay.
the questions because I can't see them on my side.
Okay, sure. I'll keep them on there. And you keep them coming, guys. So this is the last question that we have in the list, but you guys can ask as many questions as you like. So
Yeah.
what do you do when you do burn out as a leader? That's a really good question, actually.
Yeah, I would like to know
Because
that
that
myself.
that time comes and you know, it's a very hot kind of almost fad term, but I don't think it's a bad fad term. Is self-care, is taking time, like I was talking about, buckling down and setting appointments with yourself. And so that's a really good sustainable tool if you're doing that regularly, many times a week. I prefer daily myself, but to schedule time with yourself to remember your purpose and to not get lost in just the motion of things and to not let everything just take you and not just, I'm not a believer in the quote unquote go with the flow because water flows downhill. Um, so I'm big on being a driver in your life, taking an active role in your life. And like I said, burnout does happen, but taking those scheduled moments, so being preemptive instead of curative for the burnout. If you think of burnout as an ailment, be preventative, not curative. Don't wait for it to creep up on you and take you down for the count. Prevent it day in and day out. Schedule those appointments. Be like, I remember why I'm doing this, why I'm walking this path, who's behind me, who am I leading? Whether it's, you know, I'm not a parent myself, but maybe it's your children, maybe it's your students, maybe it's your employees, maybe it's, you have somebody who's learning from you. And to remember, like I said, daily, that you are not only grateful to have that impact and to have that influence over the world around you, but to remember that, okay, I have a duty. And it's not so much like I need to do this, but to remind yourself, like, I have a purpose here. I have a goal in mind. I have a beautiful place that I can bring these people and myself. And so that's a very empowering. It's tough to lose motivation when you're grateful. I think gratitude practice and when you're taking care of yourself and remembering your purpose, very, very hard to lose steam when every day you are eating, breathing, and sleeping what you do because it's why you live. And that's a grand thing to start talking about, is why we live. And that's going to be very individual, but it's, like I said, try to be preemptive and it's going to happen. It's going to happen. We all burn out. I've burnt out before. I'm not saying that I learned this immediately and I never falter. That's a pipe dream. Nobody is going to never falter. None of us are perfect, of course. And if it does happen, take the time to recharge. Take the time, because you have to acknowledge that you are no good to the world around you. And I don't mean that you're not good to the world around you, but you're less service to the world around you when you're burnt out. And so what can I do for anything around me if I'm not at my fullest potential, if I'm not whole? So that's why it's important to not think of that downtime. That's like, oh, the 30 minutes of meditation, that's me time. It's like, yes, on the surface, it's me time and I was burnt out. And on the surface, this is me time to recover. But it's acknowledging that if I go out into that world and try to serve the world while I'm burnt out, it's going to be very lackluster. You're going to get really lost in it and you're going to get confused and you may forget why you're doing it. And then you get lost in that like robotic, I'm just going through the motions. And so taking the time to recharge, because time and good sleep is a cure for almost anything, in my opinion, especially psychological. So committing time to good sleep is such an underrated, that's a very like tangible good sleep. Dedicate, maybe you have trouble getting to sleep, but dedicate that 8 to 9 hours of sleeping no matter what, because understanding that you emotionally, cognitively, physically, you will be affected in all those ways if you're not getting that adequate sleep. Your work, you think, oh, if I cut 2 hours off my sleep, I have 2 extra hours to work. Yes, you have 2 hours extra to work, but you're operating at 60%. So you're still losing, you're net losing if you're not dedicating time. That's the same thing with the recharging, the meditation, relaxation. Why do people go on vacations? That's all there. That recharge time, they show in production of businesses, that vacation time, they come back and they're on fire. You know, salesmen, sales doubling and all those kinds of things. They're on fire. They are more potent service providers for their chosen field when they have the time to recharge. And we know that. That's shown across the board. That's why Nike, Google, many other companies they have nap pods in a lot of their facilities. And this isn't some lax, like, oh, we let our employees nap. They know they come back and they kill it after just a midday recharge, those 20-minute hour long, whatever, those recharge naps. That's something you think a nap, oh, they're not getting anything done, but they come back and they're so much more productive that it makes up for that hour and then some. So dedicating that recharge time because it makes you more potent at your service. So that's a very, very important thing to understand the value of recharge. It exponentially increases the amount that you can produce for your said service.
And that's a good way that you put it, that you're only operating at 60%. And that's something that people don't think about. And, you know, as I've gotten older, I've had to go to bed earlier because I get up very early and I can't just go the same way as I used to be able to go. I can't sleep 5 hours, 6 hours. I have to get a little bit more in now. And I think you're right to say that. And it looks like the questions have come back to my screen right here. So let me figure it out really quick. Javi says, how important is it to surround yourself with those that want to be better at what they do? I think that's a very good question for you. Why don't you answer that one?
Okay, so let me try to find that again so I can read it. Can you read that one more time for me?
Yeah. How important is it to surround yourself with those that want to be better at what they do?
Oh, was that the same question?
I think so. Yeah.
I think the one you, okay. So we'll answer that one first. Okay.
I've got two more. Yeah.
How important is it to surround yourself with those who want to be better at what they do?
What they do.
I don't think there's much of another way, to be honest. And that may be just an oversimplified answer, but to be honest, surrounding yourself with people who, and I would never want to say that a person who doesn't strive is inherently toxic or anything like that. Those are very strong terms. Mm-hmm. But I've heard somewhere that you are the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with.
Right.
And that's something I think is very true. And maybe there's variables and things like that. But the 5 people you spend the most time with are the people that you should definitely have some sort of assessment over. And no, you can't dictate and change them and make them the person that you want to be around you, because then that's just a control scenario. That's not how that works. But there's also a level of attraction in that whatever you practice or do, and if you're striving to be the best at it, the only people who are going to be attracted to you are people who are in the same mindset. Because if someone stumbles upon me in a park practicing backflips and handstands and martial arts and sparring with a partner or something like that, they see that and they're somebody who really likes to just, you know, eat takeout and binge Netflix. I keep bringing up binge Netflix because that's one of the more common bad habits, I think, in our time today. But those who like to binge takeout and Netflix, the person is going to see that and they're not going to be like, hey, I want to hang out with you. You're not going to attract that kind of person. And so, like, again, this is where that embodiment comes in, being that leader, that beacon of what it is that you're speaking. People who resonate with that message are going to come to you. And yes, you are out in the world still navigating, and maybe you stumble upon someone who's like, hey, I like the way you think. And I want to get to know you. And, you know, you seem like you could bring value to my life and I could bring value to yours. And this could be a very symbiotic relationship. That's a powerful thing as well. But understand that if you are living it, eating, breathing, and sleeping it, there's just no room for people who don't want to be the best at what they do, who don't want to better themselves. If you are that, those people will either be intimidated by you. They'll just be completely turned off to the idea of hanging out with you. Like, you're too much. You're just like, I've had so many of my friends from like high school and things like that see what I've done now. And they're very much so like, whoa, dude, like, that's too much. Like, that's too much. Like, they're very too much discipline. It's like, I can't do that. I can't have fun doing that. And it's like, well, you haven't dedicated the time to. And that's a good sign that you're growing, is when things like that, when those things kind of start to trickle away, and it's amicable. It's a mutual understanding that it's like our values have just shifted, just diverted. And it's not a negative thing, but that's also a good thing, because that's growing. That means you're moving in the direction you want to go. You are steering. That's a good way to put it, is you are the driver in your life. Is that shows that you're steering because you're going somewhere. You're not in the same spot. You're not in the s上 values that you did, you know, for me back in high school, or for back in college, or for your last job, or whatever time frame you use. You're not in that same pool of thought. You're not on that same route. You have shifted in a direction, and that means you're guiding it somewhere. And most people are going up. Like I said, if you're steering it and you have an active part in your life, then, like I said, you're going to be surrounded by people who want to be the best at what they do. So that will happen very naturally. Not to say that you sometimes have to take an active role in making sure that the people around you are like that, because people will come into your life and they'll be like, oh, you're nice and you're kind and you're all those things. And you're neat and you're funny, and so they'll want to spend time with you. And maybe you're kind of like, but you don't want to do a whole lot. You're not very confident in yourself, or maybe you have a very negative outlook on life. And then you try to embody that and you try to influence them and help them. But if they don't take on to that, maybe they're not ready to learn that lesson. And you have to gracefully acknowledge that. And then again, be a leader in that situation and acknowledge that maybe you shouldn't be investing a lot of your time in this when you could be bettering yourself to serve the world around you. Because at the end of the day, I like to think that's what a lot of people want to do, is they want to find their unique way to serve the world around them. And anything that doesn't serve that purpose is extra, is extraneous, and it's superfluous, and it should be slowly removed from your life. Anything that does not serve your purpose. I think that's a good way to go about it.
Yeah, and I think that you hit the nail on the head, that you're like the 5 people that you surround yourself with. I think that's a very important thing, and you want to surround yourself with good people. So that was a really good question, and you did great with that one. And then we got one more from Master Joe. Who controls goals, parents or the student? What do you think?
That's a good point. I think at a certain age, and I couldn't give you a number because people mature differently.
Right.
But I think at the start, I do believe that as a very young student, you're talking 5, 6, 7 years old, they're just learning what a goal means. They're just all learning that.
Right.
And so at the start, I think it is important for the parent to set baseline goals. Like, of course, maybe a student, if you left them to their own devices, maybe they wouldn't do their homework at 6, 7 years old. That's very expected. They'd rather just go out and play. Like, they'd rather just do that, which, dessert is sweet because you ate your nutritious food first. And maybe they'll just go right after I think we flock towards that immediate gratification, and kids are not an exception. So at the start, I think parents should have some dictation over the goal. They should be guiding in that direction. However, what I must note is that it's equally important that I've heard this phrase, and my mom said this sometimes, and I didn't like it then, and I don't like it now. It's the do as I say, not as I do. And that's almost scraping off embodiment, in that I think it's purposeful. And for me as a teacher, for my students, and I think parents could also benefit from this, and they should explore the idea, of course. I would never tell a parent how to parent. I've never been a parent. However, it's something to explore with anybody that you're leading, to remind yourself that I must embody this, because they are learning from me through imitation as well. They may hear what I'm saying, but if they see me going against what I'm saying, at best, they're confused. At worst, they're just going to imitate you, and it won't matter what you said. So reminder, at best, they will be confused if you do not embody the goals that you are setting for them. So at best, confusion. And that's not where we want our students, our children, anybody that we are leading to be. So at the start, set it, but make sure that you're following those guidelines as well, because embodiment, like I said, is part of the almost like what I would say, the holy trinity of teaching, is that first and foremost, that it makes sense. That it's like, I come into a martial arts school and your black belt martial artists are impressive, and they are. Like, that's one of those things it makes sense. You see it, it's like, I want to learn how to defend myself. Those people look like they're doing a really good job defending themselves because they've taken it. Okay, it makes sense. They're learning how to defend themselves. It's right there in front of you. 2, embodiment. Can the person, and for ours, can they defend themselves? Can the instructors defend themselves? And you've all seen that we're very fluent in the sparring rings and those things. You've seen that with your own eyes. And so again, embodiment. Are they athletically developed? Do they have their skill sets down? Do they understand the terminology? Do they understand what they're doing? That's embodiment. And then 3, do they have students that it worked on too? Those are the 3. So does it make sense? Do they embody it, and have they taught it to other people and it worked? Because then you have a method. And so that number 2 is that embodiment. That's very, very important, is that the person you're learning from is somebody who embodies that. If you go into a salon and you see one who has a very nice hairstyle, very similar to what you're going for, and somebody who has they shaved the middle of their head and then painted this green and it's in spikes and stuff or something crazy, which one are you likely going to trust more? Of course, the person who has what you're going for, you're like, oh man, that was a good, you have an idea, you have a taste for what I'm going for. So like I said, just embodying that for the kids and for your students is very, very important.
Yeah, so it sounds like it's a learning process. It starts with the parents, and then the kids pick it up eventually, but the parents have to walk the walk to be able to, well, not have to. What I mean is, if that's what you want to instill, you've got to show it on a regular basis.
Of course.
Okay.
Oh, and
Okay.
I think I actually found this question that got it was from Mr. Harrison actually. He said, "What are some important steps you'd take as a leader to organize and develop a small group to achieve common
Oh,
goals?"
nice. Very good. Yeah, I didn't see that one. That's weird. And the burnout question's not here anymore either.
I think it goes to this answered section. There's an answered.
Yeah, yeah, I put them all there. Yeah,
Oh,
that's
okay.
weird. So the
Okay.
burnout question's gone, and Mr. Harrison's question has replaced it. Okay, so there you go. Go for it.
Okay. Well, I'll answer that question then. So,
Yeah.
what are some important steps you take as a leader?
Let's see. I think we got a freeze. Let's see. Yeah. Okay. Wait a
Okay.
minute.
All right. There we go. Yeah, I
You're
saw
back.
us free, so I paused. So we're good.
Okay,
So
you're back in. Go for it.
starting with the question. So what are the important steps you take as a leader to organize and develop a small group to achieve a common goal? There's a lot of pieces to that. And we keep touching on this term, this embodiment. That's one thing that gets people curious. They see it. How many times do people probably walk by the school's door and see what's going on? They're like, that's kind of cool. If we were all just sitting around talking about martial arts, people would be like, oh, what's this study group? What is this meeting here? Like, what's going on here? They're not embodying martial arts. I'm not going to learn martial arts from somebody who just talks about martial arts. And so that's again, that embodiment, making people curious, giving them some, almost like a taste that, the intro lessons, them seeing it, them seeing it and feeling it for the first time. That's an important thing. Also pre-framing with honesty that the teaching process takes a tremendous amount of trust, and that you may not always see the reason. Why are we doing so many punches? Why are we doing all the warm-ups? Why are we being still? Why do we do the statue game? Those are all questions you can ask, but you also have to trust that your teachers who are exemplifying where you want to be and where you maybe want your student to be and your child to be, those people walked the same rite of passage, and it worked for them, and it worked for the people they learned it from, and it worked for the people they learned it from. And a lot of them are age old, like how many centuries have people been throwing jabs, throwing punches, and throwing kicks, and training Wing Chun? Like, I mean, it's something that you have to trust that it's tried and true. Is that it's worked time and time again, and it will continue to stand the test of time. They call this the Lindy effect, which it's like with humans, if you have a 20-year-old and a 95-year-old, you can assume that the 20-year-old probably has more years ahead of them than the 95-year-old. That's the direct correlation with age. But the Lindy effect is the inverse of that, in that how old it is, you can suspect it to reflect that age again, meaning you can expect it to double. Like a book that's written last year, probably not, most books written last year are not projected to make it another year. They're not projected to do that. Most books fail like that fast. But think about maybe the Bible that's been around for a while and it's not going anywhere, So there's it's the Lindy effect. The wheel, how long ago was the wheel invented? Do you think it's going anywhere? No, it's not, because it's old. Oh, it's going to die soon. It's subject to the Lindy effect, meaning that it will expand. Same thing with martial arts. It's been around for thousands of years and it's worked effectively. Martial artists are the most elite at hand-to-hand combat because they train it. That's their subject matter of study. And it will continue to be so because they're constantly.
Let's see. Lost him again. Let's see. He should be back in any second. Let's see. He should be
I saw
there.
myself.
Okay.
I saw myself.
The effect. Martial artists. That's
Yeah,
their
so they're
expertise.
constantly picking it apart, refining it, honing those skills, and they're constantly, so it is expected again to live for another thousands and thousands of years versus something created last year. It's very unlikely. The older it is, the longer it's projected. Some things are affected by the Lindy effect. Some things like organisms are affected differently. But like I said, so seeing that embodiment, like I said, and then I almost lost base of the question. So we're here. I got a little off track there. So to achieve the common goal. So like I said, first, that embodiment, them seeing that it's been around a while, it's probably going to be around longer. People intuitively know that. The Lindy effect is just a name for it. And then, like I said, the trust, getting them to trust you as a teacher, getting them to acknowledge that if they're going to learn anything, they're not going to know everything right away. There is a value to just, and I don't want to use the word like blind, but there's to instruction that you don't understand because you're not at that level. You can trust that somebody who's done what you just started, the person who's done that for 10 years is not giving you bogus. They're not out there to give you some useless thing that they didn't use that didn't work for them. They're giving you the best of the best. If you are on day 1 and they are on year 10, then you can safely say that you get to skip so many fails, so many injuries, so much useless content. You get to skip all of that, and you get the gold. You get the refined product of 10 years of a human being's life. That is a huge gift of mentorship, of having somebody who you call a teacher. That is a profound thing. So getting them to that small group to achieve that common goal, there's a level of trust from the student. The student has to be willing to be a student, and you have to remind them that you can almost challenge them and be like, do you have what it takes to be, and we say, do you have what it takes to be a black belt? We challenge you guys in that way. We are challengers. But even in a more general sense, you might challenge them and do you have what it takes to be a good student? Do you have what it takes to question your own thoughts? Do you have what it takes to question what you've learned before? Do you have what it takes to practice this tried and true methodology? Do you have what it takes to step in the ring with another opponent and test those skills? You have to trust that your teachers have your best interest and growth in mind, because that speaks to them. It's not just a one-way kind of transaction. That speaks to them. How you perform will reflect them as teachers. And so they have skin in the game. They have invested in your growth, in your excellence, and you can believe that. And so they're doing everything in their power with a lot more experience to make sure that you achieve the same level of success that they have achieved. So I think that's one of those things. To get them to achieve a common goal, you have to develop that rapport. You have to get that trust with them. And they have to see that that's what I want for myself and for the people around me. That's what I want to invest my time in. Is I want to become that, or some semblance of that, or my own version of that. That's how you get somebody to take on this, to come into a small or large group and to achieve a common goal, for sure.
I think that was a really good answer. And I think we're a little bit over time, but that's okay. That was a really good session that we had today. Waylon, if you had to pick, which one was your favorite question to answer?
Ooh, okay, let me look at them all real quick again.
And there was a burnout question, which is not.
I see it now. I see it. I see the
Is it
burnout
there?
question.
Where is it?
It's an open still, is what it says for me.
Oh, is it? Okay,
Yeah.
it's not showing it to me. Yeah, my side has been glitching like crazy.
I actually think that burnout question, what do you think is the best way to recharge yourself when you do burn out? Because I got to talk about preemptive care versus curative care. That was a seed that allowed for a really nice conversation, a really good topic that I like to tap into. So I'd say that was the most, it brought insight to me. And so that's how I can tell that a question was good, that it made me bring some insight to the table. So I like that a lot. I like that question the most.
Well, good. Who posted that one?
It says it's anonymous.
Oh no!
Honor system. If you posted that question and you're still on, you should put your name in the chat.
Or you could just text us if that was you.
Or you can text us or something like that. But yeah, we'll make sure you get your stripes and everything.
Yes, perfect. But Waylon, I think that was a great talk, and I really like how focused you are on reps and discipline in the journey. And I think that a lot of the people who are on today really got something from it. And next week, we're going to be having Christopher Fu on and Sifu Glenn. So it should be pretty fun. And then we're going to have a whole new batch of people for the week after. But nice. Hopefully everything will go well with theirs like it went well today. But Mr. Waylon, thank you very much for being on today. And we will see you guys in class. And thank you all very much for your participation.
All right, guys. You guys all have a good one. We'll see you guys soon.
Have a good one, Mr. Waylon. Enjoy your day, okay?
Thank you, sir. You as well.
Bye-bye.